So somebody over at Marvel Comics seemed to come to the conclusion that Red Wolf, that character, it's a Native American character, might be offensive, and that maybe we need to change that name. Is this a priority? Does this solve anything? Is it? And what's weird to me about some of these things is that it's like nobody notices for like 20 years. And then suddenly somebody notices, and it's like, oh my God, this is the most racist thing in the world. We've got to change this. But if it's the most racist thing in the world, how did it go unnoticed for like 30 years? It like I don't know. This whole thing seems strange. Let's talk a little bit about Red Wolf, Marvel, and when you change things about characters. Hey everybody, this is Perch. I did a video a while back around, well, not that long ago, about a week or two ago, and I got some really thoughtful comments on it about what do you do with kind of racist depictions in the history of comics. And I was pointing at some of the things done in like the, well, as an example, in the 40s you had, pretty stereotypical Asian characters. I mean, full on kind of buck teeth, everything else. You had some black characters rendered in a very, I don't know if there's a good term for this, just very stereotypical way, but that's not a fair word. One interesting thing about kind of what I would call racist depictions. So here, let me define a little bit what I'm talking about. So in like Shazam, there were characters in comics that were black characters, but they were drawn differently. They were drawn super goofy, the very exaggerated lips and but not like a little exaggerated, like really exaggerated lips and kind of facial characteristics and other things. And it's not like it was. It's not like comics are caricatures to some extent in how they render different heroes, different villains, how they render facial characteristics. They tend to be they take exaggerated views of people. It's one of those reasons why you have like the muscly guy and the perfect female form. These other things. It takes more what I would call a caricature of kind of a heroic image or the quote unquote perfect male, perfect female character. These are a little different. When you say it's a caricature of a black character or a black person, it's not really accurate because the whole style is different of how the character is rendered. If you've seen some of these comics in 30s and 40s, you know what I mean. That took way too long to explain. But we did a video talking about, should you go back and should you erase these comics or should you leave them be? What should you do with them? And I think from my own personal standpoint, they're in many cases very hurtful images. They are. It's not just like your perception of race changed over time. It's like at the time these were drawn, it was designed to be insulting. The best way to describe it, the actual one you can do, is you'd have like Superman flying over and attacking the Japanese who were at war with us at the time during World War II. And the Japanese were drawn super, super weird, definite, like exaggerated yellow skin, giant buck teeth. They were drawn to be insulting. They weren't drawn kind of as like a lazy caricature. They were drawn with the intention to kind of, insult the country we were at war with. Now you can argue that that's racist or not racist, or it is racist now, but at the time we were at war with them, so it was okay. That's not the argument I want to get into now. That's not the argument I'm trying to make at the moment. The case is of those comics, of those images, should you go back and remove them or not? And I think there's you can make legitimate arguments either way, but one important factor is that when the characters were originally drawn in that way, they were drawn to be insulting. I think the intent was to be insulting to the race at the time. I don't think many people would disagree with that, but it is yeah, it changes how I look at things anyway. To say, did the artist, did the creator create this comic character or draw this image or do this? Did they know they were being insulting at the time or not? So then we get into things like Red Wolf. So Red Wolf is a Native American character, Marvel character, and recently was in Avengers, Occupy Avengers, and briefly, kind of, they were trying to make a comic go with Red Wolf, but it really didn't. It didn't take, and then they're, part of Secret Wars. The idea was that they wanted to have a good. Is one of these B or C characters that Marvel really wanted to push, but really had no hope. They didn't put on a creative team that was ever going to make that really work, and it didn't. And so, the character kind of faded back into obscurity. I'm not sure where the character is today. I think dating the female Nighthawk. I'm not sure. Anyway, just kind of vanished from Marvel history to some extent. But now it's recently come up that Red Wolf is a racist name, the red part, and I think it's probably, some people were watching the news and they're talking about how, there's a renewed effort to change the Redskins name, the football team, from Redskin, and somebody at Marvel's like do, and then they come across like, oh my God, we have a character, Red Wolf. It's not Red Skin, but it's Red Wolf. It's almost as bad. We have to change this as a racist name. How did we do this for a long time? And my perspective is this. I mean, first off, the comic company, this is not going to be a video where you have a big angry defense of Red Wolf. No one cares really about Red Wolf one way or another as a comic character. That's arguably the bigger problem here, is that if you want to have a strong Native American character that people know and remember and care about and invest in, you need that. You don't have that today. So whether you call him Red Wolf or just Wolf or Ghost Wolf or Spider Wolf or, Deadpool Wolf or whatever you want to call him, nobody cares about this character. And if you really want to honor kind of as a Native American legacy in comics, you need to get people to actually care about the character. That would like be step number one. Get people to actually want to buy the comic, where people care whether this character lives or dies. Today, if you did like the Null is Coming event, and you're like, a shocking death in issue 3, you'll never believe who he died, and then the character who dies is Red Wolf. Like, nobody would care. You could resurrect him or not. Nobody cares. So first step should be probably get people to care about that character. But then becomes do you change the name because the Red Wolf is racist? Well, again, as a publisher, you can kind of do whatever you want. I mean, I could really care less whether you change the name or not from a character standpoint. Anyone who tells you that you've ruined my childhood because you changed Red Wolf's name is lying. There's no childhood to ruin there. Nobody cares. But on the other, the argument for there is a history, there's a legacy. But it's not much of a legacy. I mean, there's something there. I think if you suddenly came to the conclusion, and maybe this is where I have a gut reaction against a lot of the renaming, a lot of the removing these characters, even though I don't particularly care. I often have a gut reaction because I don't feel like the people going into this really know what they're doing or are really doing it, for good reasons. Now, what are the good reasons? I think a good reason might be don't be racist. If the argument is, hey, we're going to try and remove racism from comics, cool. I'm on board. I don't know a lot of people, like, who are the people who are going to go like, no, we want to leave that racism in comics? Who's that side? I don't know that side exists. Maybe, but who cares about them anyway? But I think most people get on board with the idea of having comics be less racist. I just think most people struggle with the idea that if we just rename Red Wolf and we go back and we take away from sale the images of Captain America or Superman beating up the Japanese, that suddenly we fixed our problem and comics is no longer racist. I think it's a very naive, very childish view to think that solves much. Now, if you want to do it because that's a first step, okay, but I guess I'm very interested in what steps 2 through 3, it's 2, 3, and 4 are. What are those extra steps? What are we going to do to make comics a better place? And I question anyone who thinks that changing Red Wolf's name makes comics a better place. I would like to have a debate about it. Every now and then, by the way, I do a topic and somebody comes on and they show me the light. They They go, here's what you weren't thinking of, and they lay out a case, and I always really appreciate it. It's always weird to me, by the way, when people do that and they're like, hey, I hate to disagree with you, and they almost like they have to excuse it, like, yeah, I'm sorry for saying anything, but I disagree. Never be sorry. I just disagree. It's cool. I am actually interested in learning your perspective. So if somebody has a perspective of how changing Red Wolf's name is going to you know, help with racism, I'm curious. I just don't see it myself, and that's why I take the stance of, if you want to do that, I mean, cool. You know, what are you going to do in addition to that? Like, are you going to change the name, and you're going to do a really cool one shot where maybe you get Barry Windsor Smith who would draw the hell out of a Red Wolf comic, like do a one shot graphic novel where he is, I don't know, whatever. It's set back in the 40s, and there's some dire plot that he's got to almost, you know, go to the ends of the earth to solve, you know, both as a detective and kind of then to solve it with that. I mean, yeah, bring that on. I'd love to see that comic. But if the idea is we're going to rename him, and then he's going to have a guest appearance in, you know, as a member of the Agents of Wakanda for 2 issues, and he uses like his animal sensing powers to kind of find MODOK. I'm not interested in that. And I would argue that, you know, at that point, kind of using a token Native American character with vague animal spirit powers is arguably more racist than calling him Red Wolf. I would say, you know, if you're boiling down these characters to a caricature of what people think a Native American superhero would be, I'm not interested. And I think you've missed kind of the plot. You've missed the point of trying to solve one problem while not solving the other problem. I don't know. Again, maybe I have this one wrong, and I'm very curious to hear what you think. If you think, does Red Wolf need a name change in 2020? Does this fix anything? Does this make the character better and more compelling? Does this you know, take away a hurtful thing from, you know, from the world? I mean, I have some background, some heritage in my lineage, and many friends who are Japanese, and you know, I think that, to me, uh, if you're going to go back and you're going to want to rename the Mandarin because the name is racist, but you're going to proceed to not do any of the character, not have any compelling, you know, Asian character, not you know, then I don't know that you've solved anything. You haven't. I'm not sitting around offended by the fact that he's called the Mandarin any more than I would be offended if I stayed at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, which is a pretty badass 5-star hotel. I mean, you know, it's a nice place. It's a nice place to stay. I don't think about that name, but again, maybe I'm crazy. I, I don't know. What about you? Red Wolf, have you ever thought about this before? Is this a weird non-issue? Why are people thinking about it? I guess the big question I'd love to have answered, in addition to the others I've asked, is why is it in 2020, you know, July, did somebody come to the conclusion that, oh no, we've got a Red Wolf character, we've got to change that right now. This is a disgrace. Why now? Why not last year or 5 years ago? And before somebody says, you know, hey, better than late than never, I mean, sure, there's no time duration. I mean, if somebody tries to right a wrong, if this is a wrong, you know, great. Whenever that happens, great. But does does anyone see this as weird that now we're dealing with this now? Like, and what do we hope to get out of that? Like, we changed the name, and then what? And then I mean, are we, you know, are we? What are you going to do next? I'm honestly asking. I don't know what the value is of changing a name and then hiding the character, or you know, let's like, well, we'll get back to this character again in 12 years. Is that what have we solved exactly? I'm not sure. But again, I may be missing something big. Please let me know. Honestly, I would love to know. Leave a comment below. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch. But most importantly, thanks for listening.